Hello, this is Emily from Kitchener Public Library's Hefner Studio, and today we'll be talking about night photography with your mobile phone. Something I'd like everyone to remember is the best camera is the one that you have with you. So you might have a traditional camera with you, you might have maybe a GoPro, but typically I think what we usually have on hand is our mobile phones. So that's why I'd like to show you how you can really stress test your camera and get some great shots of things like the Milky Way or the stars. So let's take a look. So here we have some unedited experiments, and I'd like to have everyone remember that a lot of this is a bit of a gamble, reliant on a few different conditions and factors that we're going to talk about. As you can see here, we do have some light pollution in this one, and we've got the Milky Way, but you might be able to tell this one is on a little bit of an angle. All right, so first, let's talk about equipment. Some things that I highly recommend is your mobile phone, a tripod, or something that you can use as a tripod so you don't get any shake when you're taking the long exposure, because that would make your images turn out pretty wobbly looking. Number 3 is patience. So typically there are a lot of conditions that have to align for your mobile photography to work out. So sometimes you do have to be patient and try multiple times to get the shot that you would like. And 4th is having a self-timer for your photo. So I like to put my timer on 10 seconds so I have time to set up the photo how I would like, put it on its tripod, or adjust it however I want for the shot. And then since it is at night, I might still need to turn off my flashlight before the long exposure starts. All right, so here's some experiments that we've got here, and I want to show you that it is possible to get a shot of the stars with your mobile phone, or even in the one case of the Northern Lights, if you're exceptionally lucky. Basically, your native camera app probably has a manual mode or a pro mode that you can adjust the exposure, maybe up to 30 seconds, hopefully. And each phone is going to be a little bit different, so your settings might be different than my settings, and that's all right. I also want to talk a little bit about ISO or ISO. It can be manually adjusted, but remember, as you increase the ISO, you'll get more noise in your photo. So we want to keep the ISO low. And if we were zoomed in on this image here, we would be able to see a little bit of noise. I have less in this one. So yeah, you can see the photo on the left has high ISO and the one on the right has low ISO. One more thing about these experiments. I'd like to say that while I advocate strongly for a tripod, I didn't have one on either of these occasions when I decided to do some night photography. So I believe in the Bruce Peninsula situation, I was using just a rock to lean my phone against. And in this instance, the Samuel de Champlain, I was using a hiking stick that I had anchored on some concrete blocks that I found on the beach, and I attached my mobile phone case to the top of the hiking stick as my tripod. So you can get creative with this, and I encourage you to do so. Okay, so let's take a closer look on the conditions to increase the chances for a great shot. So let's talk about a few variables today that may be big or small factors in your photography. So number 1 is light pollution. We're going to take a look at a website that shows you the amount of light pollution in the area that you're going to go to take your photos. This is really important because I don't want you to get discouraged. Say you're in a very high light pollution area and you're just not getting that shot of the Milky Way that you're looking for. It could be that you just have too much light all around you to get a decent shot of the stars. And then number 2 is the phase of the moon. Maybe if the moon is really, 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 really bright, it's going to change how your photo looks, but maybe that would be a good opportunity to photograph the moon. Number 3 is the sunset and sunrise times, and also the moonrise and moonset times. So this is just another good factor to keep in mind of your lighting conditions. Okay, and number 4, I put wind, but I want to say wind and weather. If you have a lot of overcast clouds, you're going to have a trickier time photographing the stars. If you have a lot of wind, it's going to be tricky to really steadily anchor your camera. So let's take a closer look on how you can identify if the factors are in your favor for a great shot or not. This is an awesome website I found called lightpollutionmap.info, and this lets you assess the light pollution in the area you'll be taking photos. So here I have a screenshot from that website, and we're looking at the region of Waterloo here. Specifically, the pin is on Kitchener, and you can see that really bright white pink color. That's the high light pollution. And then kind of off the map here is maybe low light pollution. So the blues are low. But you can see perhaps you sneak off to a lake. That's maybe a little bit better chance of a good photo. Or maybe you're after some streetscapes or cityscapes at night, and you might have better luck outside of that red zone. All right. So let's take a look here. Some of the photos I've taken have been right around here. So this is Bruce Peninsula National Park, and it's also a dark sky preserve. So it's intentional that there's not a lot of light pollution in this area. And that was where I was able to get the shot of the Northern Lights. And this is a park I was at recently, Samuel de Champlain. And as you can see, it's just very luckily located away from 2 light pollution zones. This one is showing Parks Canada's dark skies across Canada. So for Ontario, we know about Bruce Peninsula, Fathom 5 National Marine Park, that kind of thing, and Point Pelee. So those would be great spots to take some photos in Ontario. Okay, so the second factor, the illumination of the moon. You can see what phase of the moon according to the date on moongiant.com. So that's a fun one to take a look at if you are interested in how shiny the moon might be on a specific night. And last but not least, you would probably want to take a look at the weather. And I've listed a website there, weather.gc.ca, to decide if it's overcast, if you've got lots of clouds and rain, or if you have a pretty clear night where you might get some great shots. But keep in mind, if there's some wispy clouds, it might add some atmosphere to your photo. So it really depends what you're after. Okay, so we've got a few experiments on the board here. I'd like you to take notice of the one on the left. This was at a campground, so there was some light around, and it looks like that's reflected in some of the leaves on the trees. And I think we can even see vaguely in the distance some campsite lights, maybe some campfires. So that definitely affected our image. And we can see a little bit of light in here along the tree line. But this is around the same spot, and I just shot straight up, and I got some interesting tree branches and some Milky Way and lots of stars there without a lot of that orangey pollution from campfires and whatnot. And we've got some more here and here. So as you can see, it's really fun to test out different angles, whether it's straight up at the sky or towards the lake, or maybe you really were interested in getting some uh, campfire lights, and that might have been ideal for you for that photo. All right, so let's dig into some of the details. So how to get your camera onto manual or pro mode. And before we even get to that part, I want to add a couple things to our phone setting. Typically, there will be a spot on your phone to add the assistive grid. That kind of helps you line up your photo, the rule of thirds, how you would like to keep everything balanced. But also this leveler will probably be very helpful for night photography when things are a bit darker and harder to see. It'll be really nice to see if your camera is level. So for example, when I was using the hiking pole and the phone case, it was pretty tricky to tell if I was level or not. So these might be helpful settings for you to add as you go to do your night photography. One more thing before we go is the shutter sound. I found this helpful when I ran my timer. So say I have a timer of 10 seconds. I had some time to adjust the camera or turn off my headlamp or flashlight before I could hear the indication that the phone was starting to take the photo. That was super helpful. Okay, so I want to show you how to change a phone into manual mode. And every phone is going to be different, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to find your manual mode on your native camera app. But first, as you can see in this example, I have an automatic indicator at the top, and once I click that, I was able to change it over to manual. And once in manual, I have a variety of settings here, but if I want even more customization, I could click this little arrow. And I want to point out the two factors we'll be looking at in more detail today. So that is the exposure time and the ISO settings. So here you can see auto mode would be a tiny fraction of a second. It would take the photo super fast. But over here, I've moved it over to a quarter of a second. And when I was taking my long exposures, that 32 seconds, that was ideal for me. And then the ISO settings, I cranked up all the way to 400. But I think if I went to do this again, I would experiment more with 200 and 100 to see if I could eliminate some of the noise I did get on my photos. So again, each phone will be a little bit different, and to find instructions for your phone's camera app, search the phone's name and manual camera settings. So I did this in a browser search for my specific phone. So for example, on Google, I just searched my phone's name, Motorola One Action, and then I said manual camera settings. And I immediately got some results directing me to how to change that into manual mode. So I hope that also works out for you to find out more settings for your phone that maybe you didn't know about previously. Okay, so this slide is about adjusting ISO and exposure time, but put simply. So you can dig into your camera settings for courses and courses and hours, and I'm going to direct you to some of these Lynda courses about night photography at the end of our presentation. But put really simply, long exposures is when the exposure time doubles the amount of light entering the camera. And so instead of your camera taking a regular photo in a fraction of a second, leaving the shutter open for 30 seconds is letting in way more light for your night shot. And the ISO, we want to keep it low unless you're getting results. Basically, unless you aren't getting results from long exposures. And then if that 30 seconds isn't basically long enough, then we want to increase it incrementally. So maybe 100, maybe 200, maybe 400 as I chose. and being mindful that the noise in the photo is also going to increase. So let's take a closer look at what that would look like with the settings here. So basically here, the exposure time is on auto, and the ISO is also on auto. And then I've changed it, so I dragged it all the way over to the right, which gave me a 32-second long exposure. And then next, I dragged the ISO over all the way to 400. All right, so moving along. Next step is to look around on your phone for a little clock or a timer. I think most camera phones are going to have a self timer. So here I clicked on it and it brought up a menu and I was able to select 10 seconds. All right, so here's just some examples of some experiments that we did. And again, try all different things, see what gets you the results that you're after. But also don't get discouraged. So if you are taking a lot of photos and they're just not quite right, I think that's okay because there's a lot you can do in post-production. So step 1, take a variety of photos with your phone. And then step 2, take that photo into Adobe Lightroom or Snapseed or another photo editor. And then we can adjust things like we can crop out any branches we didn't want, we can rotate the image to be more level if it wasn't level, and I think we can make those stars stand out a bit more by increasing some contrast and things like that. And let's take a closer look now. I've taken one of the images over to Adobe Lightroom, and I'm going to show you some of the edits that I made. So Adobe Lightroom is nice because you can edit by type. So here we're editing under the light menu. And you can see the settings that I chose for this. So I decided to boost the contrast a little bit, add a lot of highlights, bring down the shadows, increase the whites, and increase the blacks. Basically, I wanted a bit of a sharper image. And right beside the light menu, which is indicated by that little light bulb right there, is the temperature menu. So here I just increased the vibrance and the saturation a bit. And I did a few more things. So my image wasn't quite level. So basically I went under the crop and rotation menu and I was able to adjust it. And there was even an automatic rotation or an automatic leveler, which is a cool setting that I found. And next I decided to crop the image down to get rid of some tree branches. And last but not least, I went to this little share icon and I saved the image to my device. So here was our final product. We boosted, I wanted the stars to show up really bright, and we can see the stars in the water, and we can even see that the water was moving a little bit because we have a little bit of wobble there from the ripples. We've got a bit of our tree line, even though it's a little bit hidden. So from here, I encourage you to share your images and print them. And I hope that gives you some tools to go out there and stress test your mobile camera and take some fun night photography. So thank you, have a great day, stay safe, and if you're looking for some next steps, I would encourage you to access lynda.com. There's many courses available related to photography, and it's free with your library membership. If you go to kpl.org/learn, you will find our database for lynda.com there. There was lots of awesome courses I was interested in, such as enhancing night and low light photos with Photoshop. and lots of awesome night and low light training tutorials. But lastly, I would encourage you to book a project workstation at Hafner Studio to access the full Adobe Creative Cloud, which is including Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. All right, thanks very much, and we'll see you later.